The topic of today's video is helping a client choose the right whole life insurance product. This video will assume we've been working with a client, a potential client, who's at the end stage. They're ready to start a whole life insurance policy, but they're trying to figure out what product they want. They've got the company narrowed down. They're interested in MassMutual, but we've got 3 different products. We've got their 10-pay policy, 15-pay policy, and their high early cash value policy. What we'll look at specifically is what you can and cannot do with those products. We'll also measure the performance, specifically the internal rate of return. What's the growth rate look like on each of those policies? We'll see how long we can pay into the policies, and then what it looks like if we fund them for the same period of time. The purpose is to help the consumer, the interested policyholder, have full awareness of the different options. This way, when they start their policy, they're 100% confident with that product, and there's no buyer's remorse. Meaning there's not a situation where they look back and say, I wish I would have went with a different option, but the reason I did not is because I was not fully informed, or I was not informed enough to pick that option. So to provide a few talking points before we dive into the numbers, what are some of the main differences with these products? Well, the 10-pay policy will allow you to pay into it for how long? It's in the name, 10 years. So the longest you can pay into this policy is 10 years. Do you have to pay into it for 10 years? No, you can stop earlier. In our standalone 10-pay video, we looked at a funding scenario where he paid into it only for 2 years. So you can fund for a very short period of time if you wanted to. But the maximum funding period is 10 years. If you wanted to fund a whole life insurance policy longer than 10 years, this might not be the best choice. Then we've got a 15-pay policy. Similar to the 10-pay, the funding period is in the name. We can pay into it for a maximum of 15 years. And then we've got our high early cash value policy. We've got L85 here. What that represents is the age we can pay into the policy. So this case study will assume someone is starting at age 50. A 10-pay means you can pay up until the age of 60, a 15-pay, 65, and then 85 until age 85, so 35 years. So the funding period is always beneficial to be aware of, because the 2 questions is how much would you like to be able to fund your policy with, meaning how much do you want to contribute every year? And then how long do you want to fund the policy? In this example, you're going to see someone who wants to fund the policy with $100,000 per year, up to $100,000 per year. His commitment, the minimum, is about $10,000, slightly higher than that. But he wants to be able to aggressively fund this policy with 6 figures annually. So it's the dollar amount, how much, how long. If he says 10 years or less, or until I'm 60 years old, I would follow up with the question, do you think that you might want to fund it longer than age 60, longer than 10 years? Or do you think that 60 is going to be the longest? I won't hold you to any of the answers you give, but do you think 60 is going to be the longest, no longer than 10 years, and might even be 5 years or 7 years, a shorter period of time? The reason why I ask that question is because when you look at these different products, and the goal is getting the most out of your money, so we've got to focus on maximizing the cash value, the 10-pay product will give you the highest internal rate of return. Meaning if you're just looking at which product is going to result in the insurance company, in this example, giving me the most cash value, the most in dividend and interest, that 10-pay will display just that. You'll see the highest internal rate of return, the highest growth rate. Now at the same time, when you start the policy, you'll see the lowest death benefit with that policy compared to the other 2, which is important to look at, especially if the death benefit is important to you. But the 10-pay will deliver the strongest results on the cash value performance. So going back to that question, how long do you want to pay into it? If there's no chance it's going to be more than 10 years, that 10-pay is going to be a nice option. If it might be longer than 10 years, but you're not certain, the the 10 pay still might be a nice option. The 15 pay is a very nice alternative to the 10 pay. It performs very similar, slightly less in terms of an internal rate of return, comparing the 15 pay to the 10 pay, but you can fund it for an additional 5 years. So if I'm starting at 50 years old, that means I can pay into it until I'm 65. So if I want to perhaps have a policy where I can fund it for 15 years, but then I stop after 10, or maybe even after 5, that's okay. What I'm doing by going with the 15 pay instead of the 10 pay is taking out a policy that allows me or guarantees me to be able to pay into it for a longer period of time, more than 10 years, 15 years max. And then I've got the high early cash value product, which if I'm starting at 50, I can fund it until 85, which for most people, that is plenty of time. If someone said, I want to go longer than that, there are products that allow you to pay into it even longer than that. If we're sticking with one company here, you could look at their Whole Life 100, which allows you to pay into it until you're 100 years old. But if we're looking at the cash value performance with this one, that will be the weakest compared to the 10 pay and the 15 pay. So from a performance standpoint, a cash value performance standpoint, 10 pay will be number 1, 15 pay number 2, and high early cash value number 3. The item to consider though is how long do you want to fund it? And if the answer is I don't know, that's okay. We're going to go through some exercises that have helped individuals select the product that they're most comfortable with after understanding the pros and cons of the different products. So let's take a look here. What we'll begin with are policies that just demonstrate funding a policy for a long period of time, or almost as long as I can with each of the products. So we've got the high early cash value policy. Here, we're funding it for 25 years up until the age of 75. Then we've got the 15 pay policy, funding it for 15 years, $100,000 per year for 15 years. And then the 10 pay policy, funding it with $100K per year for 10 years. For simplicity here, we're going to look at Excel where we've got everything side by side. So what we just looked at, let's take a look here. First, we've got the high early cash value policy. Year 1, you pay in $100,000. What is your cash value? 100 in, cash value, just about 92%, $92,000. Year 2, you pay in 100. At year 1, at the end of the first year, you're at about 92. At the end of year 2, you're at 188 and change. So here's a question. Did you get that full $100,000 back? No, you did not. You got less than the 100K back. If you got it all back, that would be worth 191 and change. So the first 2 years, we will see that we're getting less in cash value than what we are paying into the policy. The expenses on a whole life insurance policy are typically the heaviest upfront. Now, as we continue to fund the policy, you'll notice between years 4 and 5, that's your break-even point when the cash value is equal to your total payments. This is a great option if I want to be able to fund the policy for a long period of time until I'm 85 years old. I also have high cash value up front, decent long-term cash value performance. But if I continue to feed the policy, if that's something I want to do, keep on pumping money into it, it's a nice option. What you'll notice is that the performance, the returns on cash value are lower with the high early compared to the other products, but I can get more money into the policy. So think of it this way. If I can have a 4% account, a 4% bank account where I can add $3 million to it, that's going to produce more money than a 5% bank account where I can only add $1 million to it. See what I mean? So more of a volume of money thing as opposed to just a rate. But it is beneficial to see everything side by side. So here's the 15 pay policy, 100K per year for 15 years, and then a 10 pay policy, 100K per year for 10 years. So each of these policies are maximized for cash value. We're funding up to the MEC limit. Everything is stripped down for a minimum initial death benefit, and again, maximum cash value. when we look at the performance, so we've got the annual internal rate of return and then the average internal rate of return. The annual isolates what the policy is growing by each year. So for example, when $100,000 goes into the high early cash value policy, you've got about 92% available in cash value, $92,000. That's where the negative 8% hit comes from. The second year, when you pay in 100 because you got less than your 100 back, that's where the negative 1.8% comes from. In year 3, you got your 100 back plus almost another $70, not that much, but it's not a loss. That's why we're at 0.03%. So what you will notice is as time passes, the annual IRR gets stronger and stronger. And the annual IRR is isolating the growth rate in each year. Whereas the average internal rate of return is taking into account the fact that we were negative in the first year. And as time passes, we will see it get stronger and stronger, but I do have to make up for that first year. Also, you'll always see this. I'm in the red in the average internal rate of return until I break even. Once you break even, you're in the black, meaning you've got more money in cash value than your total payments. So that's the high early cash value policy. How about the 15 pay? What do you notice here? Look at the year 5 internal rates of return. How do they look compared to that high early cash value product? They're stronger. How about year 15? They're stronger. How about year 20? They're stronger, significantly stronger at that point in time. So I see a higher growth rate. The IRR is stronger on the 15 pay product when we have identical designs here in terms of where the money is going and such. 10% base premium, $100,000 MEC limit. We went through the designs in the standalone videos when we went through each product individually. But we see stronger performance with the 15 pay policy. And when we look at the 10 pay policy, it's amplified to even a greater extent. The annual IRR is close to 5%, and this is based on a 50-year-old male at a regular preferred health rating. If he has ultra preferred, or if he's starting a little bit younger, we would see an annual IRR higher than that. But what do you see here? Where are you getting the most bang for your buck from a pure cash value growth standpoint? The 10 pay. Does that mean that's the option you should go with? Maybe. The follow-up question would be this: how long do you want to pay into it? 10 years or less? If the answer is yeah, I don't see myself going longer than 10 years, I might only go for 5 years, 7 years max, then I would definitely gravitate toward the 10 pay. Assuming, again, you've narrowed down your insurance company selection to MassMutual in this case. Typically, we go through flexibility features and other items with different life insurance companies. Let's take a look at this. And this has helped a lot of people choose the product that they feel is best for them. So let's say you said 10 years, too short. I think I definitely want to go longer than that. I like the performance on that, but I'm not comfortable going with a 10 pay, because what I definitely don't want to have to do is go through underwriting again if I want to keep funding it. And I think there's more than an 80% chance that I'm going to want to fund it longer than 10 years. If that's the case, then I would begin to look at this guy. So what's it look like here? If I look at this 15 pay policy where I fund it for 15 years, but compare it to the high early cash value where we only fund it for 15 years, because this shows funding until 75, but I don't have to fund it that long. Let's take a look. So here we go. What we have on the left is funding it until 75, the high early cash value. What's under the highlighted in yellow section, we've got it in text here, same policy, different funding periods. So these two are the exact same policy, the high early cash value. In fact, you'll notice through the 15th year, everything's identical in terms of the cash value and death benefit. The only difference is we stop the funding here. And that is not something you have to decide up front. If this was your policy, you said, I'm going with the higher yearly cash value, I plan to pay into it until 75, and then I want to stop after 15 years, you can do that. It could be after 5 years, where the funding can also adjust as the years pass. So we always build the policies with a lot of flexibility. But then what we've got on the far right is the 15-pay policy. So what's interesting about these two, and where it's helped a lot of people, is the out-of-pocket to you is identical, and you've got the same company here. So we don't have one company that's illustrating a product that projects more value upfront or long-term. We've got same company, different products, same design. Both are designed equally in terms of a minimum premium and maximum cash value. Everything's juiced for maximum cash value performance here. What's the difference? Far right, cash value difference, will show us how much more or less you have in cash value with the 15-pay product directly compared to the higher yearly cash value product, where the payment on your end or the funding on your end is identical. So what do you see? First 3 years, you've got more cash value with the higher yearly cash value product, which is normally the case. That product does give more upfront. As time passes, though, what happens? 15-pay has more. Now, if we looked at the guarantees, the higher yearly would look the strongest because it's got a higher guaranteed rate, which is important. But looking at this, the difference here, year 15, $68,000. If you're uncertain, if you want to go longer than 15 years, the question would be this. You've got $68,000 more in value here by year 15. And if you do stop at 15 with both of them, by 75, you've got $176 more in cash value. The death benefits are getting very close to each other at that point in time too. When we see these differences in value, do you look at that and say, that's appealing to me, and it's definitely worth going with the 15-pay because I don't think I'm going to go longer than that, and if I do, it might only be a year or two. I'm comfortable stopping that early. If that's the case, I would gravitate toward the 15. If you said, yeah, that difference doesn't really make it or break it for me, not even 100K, and I'm pretty confident that I might want to fund it for another 3 to 5 years, up until age 70. Those are the kind of things we want to talk through, or just have someone look at and ask themselves the questions as they're looking at different products and such. Usually, we're narrowing it down between these two, and then sometimes the 10-pay as well. So let's take a look at another comparison. Here we've got a 5-year funding scenario, which, if you're going to fund for 5 years, the 10-pay is going to look the best. The purpose of this exercise is to show, all right, I had the different options. I know I can continue to pay into this for a long time. This, 15 years, and this, 10 years. However, what if life happens with any of them? If life happens to me and I have to stop altogether after I get $500,000 in, or I'm just planning on funding a policy with a lump sum of $500,000. Which one gives me the most money? We can look at the comparison here. By year 5, you see the leader in the 10-pay. If we look at age 65, I'm just going to circle these. You're 800, the 10-pay, 787 with the 15-pay, they're close, and then 752 with the higher yearly cash value product. So there is a difference there. It's noticeable. What we've got here, these additional columns, is the yearly cash value growth. Instead of the internal rate of return, we see how much we're getting in dollars from the insurance company each year, and then the total gain. The total gain is the easiest. I can see with the higher yearly here, by year 15, I paid in 500 total. My cash value is 752, which is a gain of 252 and change. And let's wrap up with comparing the 5-year funding scenario with the higher yearly and 10-pay. Then I've got the cash value difference here. Generally speaking, limited pay products like a 10-pay or a 15-pay or a policy that I fund for a shorter period of time is going to deliver a higher internal rate of return. I'm going to see stronger cash value performance, and the death benefit will be very attractive long-term as well. Typically what you'll see here is when I get into my 80s, I've got more death benefit with the policy that has more in cash value. So that high early cash value product, if I look at age 70, the left is the high early, you've got more in death benefit. If I look at 75, I still have more in death benefit. What happens when we look at 80? Now I've got more in the 10 pay. The reason why is because when you hit 100 with most whole life insurance products, what happens to the cash value and death benefit? They become equal. So the product with the most cash value long term is typically going to show the most death benefit long term as well. So that's why this death benefit eventually catches up with the high early cash value product. If we're laser focused on the cash value component, well, then what are we going to see? A lot more cash value. If we look at age 80, there's a difference that's getting close to $200,000 there. Same company, same individual, different product. So when helping someone select the product that's best for them, what we'll go through are the different products. One, it's important to see them. Typically someone's done research and they've got it narrowed down to 1 or 2 products with one company, sometimes 2. If they're not sure, we'll start with perhaps a 10 pay, high early cash value, and then a product or 2 with another company. This way you've got a couple options and then can begin to narrow things down based on how much you want to fund, how long you'd like to fund, how much flexibility would you like. Do you want a policy where you fund $100K per year if this is you? Or do you want a policy where you can commit just to $10,000 per year and then add the rest of the 100K, the additional 90, at your leisure, but it's optional. Now it's very flexible. Will depend on the company's PUA rules and whether or not they allow that type of funding. But we've got other videos on that as we go through insurance carrier selection and such. Anyway, I hope that this was helpful. Please let us know if it was. Feel free to leave a comment or question below. And as always, I hope this helps. Thanks so much. Hey guys, Steve here with IBC Global. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you're interested in a whole life insurance policy and you'd like to work with our company in setting it up, please visit our website, ibcglobalinc.com. We would love to work with you. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And as always, I hope this helps.